When I say blended malts or blended scotch, does that get your heart racing? Do you suddenly feel a need to rush out to the store and try to shop for a new blended malt or blended scotch? Probably not. And for a long time, people have really turned up their noses or looked down upon at blended Scotch whiskies and even blended malts. But I think sentiment has really started to change on this. And I'm not sure if it's because of economic factors or because we finally have some amazing choices when it comes to blended Scotch whiskies. And just to highlight this, for a long time, it felt like Compass Box and Douglas Lang's remarkable regional malts were kind of the ones that were the standard bearers for high quality, integrity blended malt and blended Scotch whiskies. But they have company now. In the last few years, we've really seen a multiplying of new blends and blending companies. And so you look at Elixir, you look at Turntable, Adelphi, Boutique Whiskey Company, and others who are all bringing phenomenal integrity blended whiskeys to the market at really reasonable prices. It's something to get excited about. And today, what I want to talk to you about is two whiskeys from an independent bottler and a blending company that unfortunately they aren't available in my market, but I desperately want them to be. I'm going to be talking to you about Thompson Bros SRV5 8-year-old blended malt and the Thompson Bros TBBSW 6-year-old blended Scotch whiskey. My name is Matt. This is Whiskey on the West Coast. The Thompson Bros Independent Bottling Company was set up by brothers Phil and Simon Thompson. Now, they're the same people that are behind the Dornoch Distillery, which was founded in 2016. Now, as a quick aside, the Dornoch Distillery is actually a really cool distillery that's really dedicated to making old-styled Scotch whiskey. And the way they're doing this is by using direct-fired, gas-powered stills. They're using historic barley varietals that have lower yields but are more accurate to the time of the whiskey they're trying to make. They're using brewer's yeast, lots of really fascinating techniques that really appeal to a whiskey geek or nerd like myself. That just gives you some context about the people that are behind this independent bottler. Today, I'm going to be talking about two different blended whiskeys. One's a blended malt, one's a blended Scotch. I'm going to be talking about the SRV5 8-year-old blended malt. I'm going to be talking about the BSW 6-year-old blended Scotch. I'm going to talk about the SRV5 first. Let's get to that one. The SRV5 8-year-old blended malt, this is batch 13 that I have in my glass. It's 48.5% ABV, it's non-chill filtered, it's natural color. Price-wise, it runs about £33 in the UK, $55 in the US at K&L Wines. Now, SRV5, that's an acronym that stands for Station Road Vat 5, which I believe is the road that leads to the Dornoch Distillery, which is the base of operations for Thompson Bros Independent Bottlers. Now, Station Road Vat, that's actually a 1,200 liter charred and toasted oak vat that's used in a sort of whiskey solera system. For lack of a better word, we're going to call it a solera system. Now, essentially what happens is selected malts are chosen and they're added to this whiskey solera system, this vat at cask strength in different proportions that they think will yield the desired flavor profile they're looking for. Now, these malts are added to this vat. They're allowed to sort of like marry and integrate over a period of time, really come together into their own whiskey, their own singular whiskey, as opposed to a number of different individual whiskeys playing their own parts. Now, once they think this is ready, they go ahead and they remove 2/3 of this vat, leaving about 450 liters behind in the actual vat to continue for the next vatting. The removed portion is slowly then diluted to 48.5% ABV, as I mentioned earlier. And the reason why it's important to note that they do this slowly is because by doing it slowly, they're not shocking the whiskey. It's not a jarring sort of thing where they just dump water in. They are, again, allowing it to integrate, allowing it to actually marry and come together over a period of time. It's a really great hallmark of a company that's doing it right to provide you with a really great drinking experience. The resulting batch is about 800 bottles of whiskey, and the rest, as I said, the 450 liters remaining, is there as the starter for the next batch in this solera system. Really cool way of making a whiskey. Now, the other thing I want to mention about the SRV5 is that the malts that they're using to make this whiskey are said to be from the Northern Highlands, from Islay, and from the Speyside region. I'd be fascinated to know what goes into it, but I think we should just turn to the whiskey and actually try it now. I should mention that I'm reviewing these whiskeys from samples today that were provided to me by Hexagonal Crank. Thank you once again, Hex, for sending me whiskeys. By doing so, I'm able to bring more whiskey reviews and oftentimes things that I can't get my hands on, like these whiskeys, which are not sold in Canada yet. So thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. Now, the Thompson Bros SRV5, 8-year-old blended malt on the nose. Right away is vanilla custard and apple, pear. If I'm gonna get like weirdly whiskey note specific here, I'm gonna say it's green apple and it's Granny Smith apples on the nose. As I mentioned, pear. There's a subtle like lemon lime sort of thing going on here. Absolutely like the slightest fleeting bit of peat smoke in there. Yeah, really clear honey notes. I'd say like sugar cookies, like those sorts of confectionaries there. On the palate, again, like orchard fruits, apple, pear, really strong vanilla and toffee notes, really strong on vanilla for sure. Honey and like graham crackers too, which I believe are like, is it golden grams that were like the teddy bear shaped little like honey covered graham cookies? Yeah, let's say golden grams. That's bringing me back to my childhood. Wow. Lemon, citrus, some waxy, there's some waxy quality, some waxy notes to this malt. Just really interesting. That's really jiving with me. It's making me think of Single Malts of Scotland 8-year-old Kleinleash I have on my shelf here too. Some similarities for sure with that one. There's a really good weight to this palate too. It's actually a really satisfying blended malt. In the finish, there's a touch of that peat smoke that I was registering on the nose, and it's almost coming across more like a char, like a steak char or something like that. But then there's like an earthy quality to it as you're moving into the finish, that I'm actually really enjoying right now. Like super lightly peated, but they say there's Islay whiskey in here. I wouldn't be surprised if they had a certain light measure of something like Kalila in here. It's a vibrant palette that's grounded with some richness and some decadence from those sweeter tones too. I'm really enjoying this whiskey. It's definitely right up my alley. I think this would be a brilliant whiskey to be drinking in the summer. I am a seasonal drinker, so I'm gonna throw that out there. I think spring, summer, SRV5 is probably a great whiskey for that time. Now, it feels a bit like they drew inspiration from someone like John Glazer and Compass Box with this, because it's fruity, it's waxy, it's malty whiskey with some very light peat influences. I'm guessing from an Islay like Kalila. So it almost feels like, I mentioned Kleinleash, the Kleinleash on my table here. Is Kleinleash, a little bit of Kalila? That's always a winning combination. Yeah, I feel like they could use a little bit more prominent peat in here to really make this a stunner, but it's great the way it is. On top of that, if you can get it at 33 pounds, that's an amazing value. This is a killer whiskey for that price. However, I can't go too overboard on the score here, because there's only so much that good value can do. Eventually, you do want to move on to something more complex. However, this is a type of whiskey that I would keep on my shelf all the time. It's, again, an amazing value. I do give some bonus points for good value. I'm gonna put this right up around 85 points out of 100. That would be my score for the Thompson Bros SRV5 8-year-old blended malt. I think it's a fantastic whiskey. I really do think the 100-point scale really just doesn't do justice. I might move to the 10-point scale. I've mentioned this in the past, but yeah, this is a great whiskey. I'm absolutely loving this. But we should turn our attention to the Thompson Bros TBBSW 6-year-old blended Scotch at this point. The Thompson Bros TBBSW 6-year-old blended Scotch. I have batch 10 in my glass. It's 46% ABV, so a little lower than the SRV5. It's non-chill filtered, it's natural color, runs about the same price as the SRV5 as well, about 35 pounds in the UK, $55 American at K&L Wines in California. Now, an interesting footnote about this is Thompson Brothers can't actually use their name in the United States. Apparently there's a problem with using the word Thompson. And so what they've done is that they actually attributed the name to their whiskeys, Redacted Brothers in the United States, which I think is a kind of a funny way to work around it. So well done there. Now, this is a blend of a single malt and a single grain whiskey, as I understand it. And it was inspired by the old school sherry forward blends of the past, is the marketing on it. Batch 1 was widely rumored and speculated to be Macallan single malt that had been teaspooned with a single grain whiskey. And actually, some even said it was older Macallan whiskey teaspooned with single grain. I don't know what goes into the later batches. I don't know if that's true about the first batch, but what I do know is that just like the SRV5, this whiskey was rested once it was kind of vatted together, and then it was slowly diluted. So the same sort of process, the same sort of respect given to the whiskey to try and give it its best chance to really come together, integrate, and become a really good blend. So the Thompson Bros BSW 6-year-old, we should get to the tasting. All right, let's get to this whiskey. On the nose, like a super stark, like raisin note, coffee, and chocolate. So we're in mocha territory here. There's an earthiness, kind of like an earthy leather, a vibrant orange oil. It's super present, super obvious. Nothing subtle about that. Underneath all that, a bit more subtle, if we want to use that term here. There's some nuttiness too, almost like a hazelnut. This is a really rich nose, super rich nose. And it feels like a perfect winter whiskey. I mentioned that the SRV5 was great for spring or summer in my books as a seasonal drinker. I think this is a great fall or winter blend. Yeah. Wow. No, really enjoying that. If I'm picking up any grain here on the nose, it's probably there's this bit of an icing sugar, like dusting sort of vibe, like you dust on like croissants or baked goods. I'm getting a little bit of that icing sugar there. I would attribute that to grain personally. But man, this nose is right up the alley of a sherried whiskey lover. Yeah, this is in their wheelhouse for sure. All right, palate. Before I get to it, I should say that these are the first whiskeys that I've had for a number of weeks now because I got really brutally sick. So I'm just really excited to be back making videos for you guys, talking to you, and actually being able to smell and taste whiskey again. It's been a little bit. So if you haven't already, please do subscribe, like, share the video, comment down below. Have you had Thompson Bros? What are your thoughts on these two blends? As well, if these were in your market, would you buy them? Would you put them on your shelf? Do you think they're a great value and something you'd be interested in purchasing and bringing home? But overall, just thank you for watching. Really appreciate you guys being here. Getting to that palate. Dark chocolate and coffee. Ooh, that's good. That's real nice. That's a comfort dram. That's comforting whiskey. Go along the lines of that chocolate, raisin. The raisin pulls through from the nose. Unsurprisingly, with a sherried whiskey like this, The nuttiness too, it's not so much hazelnut on the palate, it's more like almonds. So I'm thinking like this is trail mix in a glass. Once again, I've used that before, but dark chocolate, raisins, almonds, yeah, that's trail mix for me. Some leathery earthiness too. Another sip. Like orange spread, orange marmalade, some cocoa nibs. There's actually a bit of a dessert spice on it too. Kind of like a dusting of cinnamon over a dessert, that sort of thing. But it's not too spicy, so it's not taken over. I really appreciate that. Sometimes I can get a whiskey that's too spicy for me. I just don't really appreciate it. I got a Bruichladdich Micro Provenance from Ribera del Duero casks that went that direction. But this is really enjoyable. It's decadent and a rich palate. I do think if I'm comparing this to the SRV5, and naturally that's what I'm doing here, I do believe that it has a thinner mouthfeel. I'm not sure if that's due to the ABV or the inclusion of some grain in this, but it's a bit thinner. The finish isn't as long lasting as the SRV5. But I think these two whiskeys, which one you prefer, might be mood or season dependent. Really amazing performance for the cost. Like the value on these is off the Richter scale. Yeah, super satisfying whiskeys. With these whiskeys, and I'll get to the score on the TBBSW 6-year-old. I have tried these now 3 times, 3 different sessions. So this is my 3rd session. I started off absolutely loving the TBBSW, the sherried blended Scotch, as opposed to the SRV5 blended malt. However, as I've drank these, I've come to appreciate more and more the SRV5 because I do think in that blended malt, there is more complexity. There's more that you can sit there with and actually dig into. I think it's a whiskey that'll be more engaging over the entire life of a bottle than the BSW. I think if you're quickly drinking a bottle, the BSW is the winner here. That's the one that you're gonna empty that bottle real quick. But the SRV5, I just think there's more to actually really dig into. There's more meat on the bones, if you will. I think this is really close to being an 85. I think though I'm going to differentiate between the scores and give the Thompson Bros TBBSW 6-year-old an 84 out of 100. It's still an amazing value. My overarching point here is that we need these whiskeys and Thompson Bros independent bottlings in Canada. We need them brought to Canada, most likely through Alberta. That's how most of Canada's whiskey lovers gets their whiskey anyway, out of Alberta to their home province. These are part of a vanguard of blends and blended malts that are coming out that are just fantastic. And yeah, I would stock these on my shelf. I'd absolutely add a bottle of each of these to my whiskey cabinet. There's no doubt about it in my mind. It's just frustrating that we can't get them here. Now we can import them, like Hexagonal Crank. Again, thank you for doing this, but the costs of importing them individually, honestly, they make them too high for me to actually want to purchase them. And so it's that interesting balancing act there. If we could have these whiskeys brought to market for about the same price as, let's say, the Maclean's Nose, the Adelphi Ardnamurchan blended Scotch, that came to Canada at about $55 Canadian. If these whiskeys were at that price, and they are similarly priced in the UK, so I don't think it's too far off the mark. Yeah, I would buy each of these. Absolutely. Thompson Brothers, I don't know what you need in order to get these to Canada. I don't know if you are looking for an importer, if they're on their way, what's going on. Please don't ignore our market, because we're loving what you're doing and we just want to be able to have access to it. All right, guys, that's it from me. Thank you so much once again for joining me, and I hope you're back in the future. Until then, I'm going to lift up this SRV5, my winner in this comparison, and I'm going to say until next time from the West Coast, Slàinte.